Well, I'm sorry, folks. I was going to have some nice intro music here, but some copyright thieves keep blocking my videos. So I'm taking the music out, and hopefully I won't get blocked this time in North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Cuba, of all places. I would have liked to listen to more of that, but it's time to start our presentation. Welcome to the Omnist Hour. This is actually our what do you call it? Our virgin flight, our first adventure into Omnism. So, welcome. Uh, for whatever reason you've come here, you've come to hear about Omnism. So, let's start with who I am. I'm Rob Tromp. I am a devout Omnist. Really. Now, what does that mean? Well, Omnism is, as the name sort of might make you think, a universal philosophy, possibly a religion. You can't really talk about philosophy without getting into the thorny nature of religion and the meaning of life and everything that we uh, pursue when we pursue philosophy. So let's start with the textbook definition of basically what it means to be an omnist. Here's my version of it. Omnism is the recognition and respect of all religions, beliefs, passions, or lack thereof. Omnists seek to expand and integrate their beliefs and passions with others, both within their community and the outside world, without allowing their core beliefs to be compromised or compromising others. Omnists hold that any beliefs or passions strongly held can take on all the qualities of a religion, whether political, economic, social, artistic, or spiritual, and that all have validity from a certain individual point of view. So that's in a nutshell what omnism is. That's more of a philosophy definition. Um, and I think you can see from that definition that omnism can be applied, can be an adjunct to almost any other philosophy, belief system, or religion. So it is certainly possible to be an omnist Christian. It's possible to be an omnist atheist. It's possible to be an omnist communist, even, or an omnist capitalist. Pretty much anything is fair game as long as you're willing to modify your beliefs enough to respect others and not want to bang them on the head or knock them down the stairs or denigrate them or put them down for having beliefs different than yours. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that an omnist accepts that it's a good thing to kill, to steal, to rape. No, pretty much any belief system that's worth anything thinks of those as bad things, and also thinks of those as things that could be a little bit complicated depending on uh, what your cultural background is, what the situation is, um, all sorts of things. So, an omnist cannibal could, in the context of a cannibalistic society, have a certain validity, a certain righteousness and justice to their worldview. And, certainly in the land of hunter gatherers, maybe in New Guinea still, there are places where very primitive tribes can only really survive by fighting other tribes and taking lives and winnowing out the population, doing their own version of survival of the fittest in their own limited way. And they could be omnist. Now, at the same time, if you went and invaded that culture with high technology. You gave them all the trappings of civilization. It might not be very sustainable to think that you could still be a cannibal. Other cultures, similarly, uh, you know, some cultures marry girls at the age of 12 as soon as they basically are menstruating and think that that's perfectly normal to begin marital relationships, conjugal relationships at that age. And within the milieu of how they operate, that may be just fine for them. Now, when those cultures impact other cultures, then we have problems. And if they're both omnist cultures, they will work out those problems by discussing their differences and either agreeing to disagree and disconnecting when they have to and just, okay, you guys do it your way and we'll do it our way. Or they work out a happy medium. They come to an understanding of what their differences are and maybe come up with a blended culture that satisfies everybody and maybe works out better in the long run. And that would be a great omnist win, now wouldn't it? Okay, so I know you're thinking about your own belief systems. Uh, you know, I don't know where you're coming from. Some of the most likely places would be Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, atheism, scientific materialism. And we can talk about all of those, and we probably will over the course of this program, which I won't guarantee will go an hour, but it might once I get a roll on. Let's see, where do we want to start with this one? Let's start with one of the most common ones. So, in the modern age, pretty much everybody has had to deal with the advent of science and how fast we're learning how things work, at least, on a cursory scale, and having that impact our previous belief systems, particularly those belief systems rooted in traditional religions. And there's been quite a bit of conflict in there, as you probably are aware. Okay, so this is one area where I think omnists have a very healthy advantage. An omnist Christian doesn't necessarily need to give up the idea of the Bible as gospel, but does need to give up some of the things in it that just are inconsistent with what you can observe, what you can learn from repeated experiments conducted by scientists. And scientists actually could learn quite a bit too, because there's a certain portion of them that are adamantly set against religion and think that there is no basis for religion in a scientific mind, which is absolutely absurd and makes them a real pain in the ass to be around too sometimes. Though most really great scientists have admitted that there must be some other greater power to explain the high degree of organization that we see around us. Just doesn't jive with core evolutionary theory and core thermodynamics, right? So everybody's got to bend a little bit, and that's what Omnism is all about. Okay, so I think I'm going to go into just a real basic theology lesson. This is omnist theology. You don't have to accept it, but it is the basis for everything I'm going to tell you and why all belief systems need to have some fundamental modifications to them to make them more healthy. Now, one of the things that makes humans such a pain in the ass is our very humanity, our human-centric view of the world. Okay, it's human nature to think of ourselves as the center of the universe. as the only being that matters. And, outside of us, the beings that matter are our families, our friends, the institutions we belong to, the nation we belong to. There's now a certain amount of identity with the planet we live on. And that's all well and good, but it's causing problems now, isn't it? Because it is a very kind of egocentric view of the world. And it makes sense. I mean, not saying it's bad. Naturally, you would give more consideration to your wife and children, your parents, whatever, than you would to a total stranger. Generally, if you're sitting on the last log of a boat out in the ocean and, only 2 or 3 people could hang on to it, you'd have a tough choice to make. And some might say, well, you know what? I'm going to kick everybody else off the boat because then I'll have a stronger chance of surviving myself. And others might say, well, you know what? I think I'll keep my wife because she's really useful to me and I love her a lot. And I'll kick everybody else off this log. Or another might say, you know what? I'm gonna keep my kids because they're my legacy. They're gonna live on after me, and they have a better chance of surviving this whole mess. And still others might say, yeah, the more the merrier. If we all sink, we all sink. And, it's just kind of the nature of things. There's very little, when you think about it, to say that one solution is better than another when it comes down to a crisis. And that's ultimately what our beliefs, what our values are all about, is a framework for dealing with crisis or opportunity. And so that kind of gets down to the basics of, how we make decisions. And Omnism is about having a philosophy for making choices. One of the core tenets of Omnism is that we are all endowed with the gift of free will. We get to make choices. And, this may be inconsistent with some determinist scientist types who say that, everything is just the result of some chemical interaction. And if we knew all the details and all the vectors of everything that was moving, we could tell you exactly what you're going to do the next second, what you're going to say, how you're going to look, when you're going to pick your nose. It's all given. It's just all chemistry. Well, I can tell you without a doubt that those scientists are stupid. Sorry, you're welcome to believe that, but it's just not true. And so part of embracing Omnism is being able to embrace the fact that no matter what belief system you have, no matter what set of fundamental truths you live by, you need to be willing to be challenged and at least accept that possibility that you might be wrong. And that acceptance of the possibility of error is the nucleus of humility in life. What makes us humble beings instead of proto-Nazis, if you will. Because everybody has it in them to be a little bit of a Hitler, given half a chance. Okay, so I want to tell you a little story about souls. Okay, most religions believe that there is even most scientists believe there's something about a human, some characteristic that transcends the biological workings of our bodies, that explains this propensity for free choice, that explains our ability to think beyond what is physically observable, to imagine things that could be, and not just the things that are. That thing, some people equate it with the brain. Some people equate it with something spiritual called a soul or a consciousness, if you want to just think in terms of brain activity. You could say it's like an individuated consciousness that represents the thoughts of this physical person. Now, those of you who are rooted in the idea that this physical world around us that we can see and observe and we live in until we die, that's all there is, well, you're going to have a very limited view of what this thing called the soul is, what this thing called consciousness is. Because I'm here to tell you, without a doubt, that that thing, that animus, that power that defines who we are, lives on. The soul is immortal. And when you die, your soul doesn't just disappear and you rot in the ground or sit in you and think, oh, darn, I can't think anymore, I'm dead. No. What happens, and this is actually quite well documented by scientific study of the few people that do have, mostly children, who have memories of previous lives. And this has been studied in absolute detail by very rigorous scientists that, in fact, we do reincarnate. And pretty much the conclusion from studying folks who've had near-death experiences and have gotten close to the other land where we go and we die, come up with a pretty consistent picture of what happens in this time between death and reincarnation. Okay. Some people say we go to some special place called heaven, this white light where everything is connected. Whatever background you come from, you have a different way of describing it to fit in with your own belief system. And, you know, when an atheist has a near-death experience or when you finally die, you're going to have this experience and it is going to leave an indelible impression on your soul to be remembered when you get back to this connected place where all your memories come back. Okay? We do reincarnate many, 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 many times. And contrary to what many people believe, the soul can occupy many, many, many different types of vessels when it reincarnates. And in fact, when souls are first born, they are generally occupying elementary particles. They don't have many decisions, do they? Ask anybody, any physicist who specializes in quantum mechanics. You don't get a lot of choices as an elementary particle. Spin up, spin down, things like that. Okay, you know, it's a pretty simple life. But that's how souls start learning to make decisions, make choices. And, you know, their choices affect whether they combine with other particles and make atoms, whether, you know, the proton gets in love with an electron and makes a hydrogen. You know, and a lot of the processes that govern stars are just a whole lot of junior souls learning the very, very basic fundamentals of nuclear chemistry. Hey, they probably know more about it than we do. Every soul vessel has a degree of complexity, has a certain consciousness that it embodies during that lifetime. And they have their own rules and their own way of dealing with the universe. And even ones that you might think are pretty tame, pretty lame, like being a plant or a tree, they have a very, very rich life. The oversoul of a tree gets to observe a lot of things, gets to touch and feel a lot of stuff during the course of, well, for a tree, it could be a lifetime that lasts several thousand years. And I'm here to tell you that if you can find a way to communicate with these guys, they retain a lot of information about what their human cousins have been up to and how we tick. And that is why there are so many plant substances which can give you very, very insightful spiritual and psychological help, which they're now discovering. If you've been following the papers, they're now realizing that psilocybin mushrooms have a therapeutic effect. Most plant hallucinogens have the potential for these effects. What scientists don't realize is that it's not just a drug that you can inject and you can have some special magical results. It doesn't work that way. It's a communion of sorts. And we'll be explaining that later, so I don't want to go too far down this rat hole because I really want to just talk about souls, because you really need to understand what the nature of souls are to go very far down this rat hole I'm going to take you down with this program. Okay, so everything is made up of souls, and each soul has a certain role in the place it occupies. Now, me as a human, as a soul incarnated as the oversoul of a human, I'm basically the leader of a lot of other souls, because there is a soul which is the oversoul of my heart. There's the oversoul of my brain. There's the oversoul of my kidneys, of my liver. And there are little oversouls of individual cells who manage all the molecules that enter and exit, enter the cellular boundary. In fact, I'm also the oversoul of every disease, every virus, every whatever comes into my system becomes part of my domain. And a lot of the life of a human is managing all these conflicting voices within us. And this is the nature, this is why we have disease. This is why we have mental health issues. This is why when people start really getting in touch with themselves, the world often labels them as psychotic and accuses them of having multiple personalities and being schizophrenic and all these things, because they don't like to think of humans as being that complex a thing. They want it to be just, you're a human. You're like this, you're not like this. You're the same as everybody else. You take the right pills, you think the right thoughts, and you're going to be just fine. Okay, well, that's one set of beliefs. I'm here to tell you it's not a very useful one. And I think most people who had a fair degree of exposure to medical science know that doctors don't really know everything. Sometimes they do a real good job, sometimes they don't. And more often than not, it really is this relationship between the doctor and the patient that determines how effective their treatment is. Because the treatment by a doctor, the treatment by a clergy, by a shaman, any healing practitioner, no matter what their art is based on, is fundamentally a communion between two souls working on some discombobulation of the souls within the body. If you approach health that way, I think you'll find that you can live a much healthier life without all the rigmarole that some people think they've got to go through to be healthy. Because let me tell you, the human body was designed to take a lot of damage and to be able to live in a pretty harsh environment. We don't necessarily need to be vegetarians to be good and holy people and to be healthy. We don't have to eat organic. We don't have to do this. We don't have to do that. Now, I'm not saying it's bad for you. If it makes you feel good, if it lifts you up, if it's part of the mythology of your uh, life philosophy, well, sure, go for it. Just don't push it on everybody else and become a pain in the ass. And I mean, I've seen some vegetarians lately that are just downright hostile about it. I mean, they attack anybody who eats meat as if they're some kind of evil person. And that's, I mean, anybody knows that that is unhealthy and that's going to cause damage to somebody's psyche to be like that. And you're not going to find the world wants to be around you if you're like that. People don't like to be dictated to. This is the same thing that you're seeing with a lot of people who are espousing this cosmic oneness, which is kind of like spiritual communism. That's all well and good for you to believe. And, if you want to go reincarnate as a species that's a hive mind and do all your thinking together and make every decision, okay, what's best for the whole colony? Who needs to die so we can all survive? That's wonderful, but don't force it on others. Not in human form. It's not going to work. It's going to create conflict. It's going to cause pain and suffering. And no philosophy that causes pain and suffering is one that you really should spend that much time espousing. I mean, certainly a certain amount of pain and suffering is inevitable. Okay? If you're stuck on a desert island with somebody else and there's nothing to eat except to each other, at some point, cannibalism is going to look like a viable alternative. And you'll have to come up with a rationalization for how that's done. Do you take a pound of flesh alternately to get by and keep looking for a passing steamer or something like that? That might be the best way to handle that situation. Is there a certain part of your body that regenerates faster? Could you live off communally? Who knows? There's all sorts of options if you just think of the situation consciously. And that's the big difference between, what people call sin and what people call a rational choice. I'm sorry to tell you that you cannot follow any tradition's teaching about what is sin and what is virtue and deal with every situation that you're going to possibly come up against. You're going to be challenged at some point or another, and you're going to be challenged in a way where you can't just say, well, I'm a Christian, so I should do that. Or I'm a communist, so I should do that. It doesn't work that way. Those things are not universals as you think they are. They have some situational ethics that you have not thought out yet. If you still make that a core part of your belief, that's okay if you want to do that. And there are times where it may be useful. But I'm here to tell you that if you're going to be going anywhere in the future as a human being, you're going to have to make your belief system just a little bit more omnist. Okay, well, I think let's see. Did I quite cover it? Well, let's end with this. So we talked about all these little souls within our bodies. Well, there are also bigger souls. In fact, even ideas have souls. Consider this. It is my strong and firm belief that there never was a physical Jesus Christ. It is also my firm and strong belief that Christianity as an idea represents one of the best soul vessels of an idea that humanity has ever created. Think of all the things that have happened, all the developments that have been made as the result of the invention of Christianity, the invention of Islam, the invention of basically the ideas of every prophet, whether they were a prophet of God or a prophet of a country. Look at Rome, for instance. Who were some of the luminaries of Rome? Julius Caesar? Yeah, he had a god complex, and it took him far, didn't it? Until he was assassinated. But he happened to have this nephew, Octavian, who somehow became the god of the Roman Empire, to the extent that every emperor after him took the title Augustus. And they had god worship of their rulers. And this is actually a very Omnist pattern. This is the pattern of the messiahs. There's not just one, there's many messiahs. And basically, every soul gets to be a messiah in Omnism. We're getting a little into the theology here, so bear with me. But I'm going to give you a taste of Omnist theology. Okay, so here's the scoop. The goal of every soul is to develop their own personality, their own strengths and capabilities, so that they can advance to the point of being a messiah of something. You can be the messiah of the Justin Bieber fan club and forever go down, the rest of your existence as a soul will be representing the idea that Justin Bieber is the best song singer ever. Sure, why not? Who's to say that that's not a useful thing? It could be that, the hero worship of singers is the most healthy way for young souls in certain soul vessels, human or alien, to grow up healthily. It's not for us to judge. And the other thing that I'm going to leave you with is the concept of the multiverse. So, remember I told you that this world, this physical world we see, isn't everything that's there. In fact, and leading edge physicists will agree with this for the most part, there are many dimensions beyond the 4 that we could observe. There are many universes beyond the one that we observe that we are in. And tying back to some of the findings of consciousness theory, in fact, everything we can imagine does exist somewhere. That's the power of consciousness. When we create something, it has an existence, if only briefly. And our choices create possibilities, create different dimensions of what might happen, any of which might be useful. And that's how, basically, the first soul, which some of you call Source, some of you call God, that's how this clever soul set up this system so that we could achieve what was a fairly well thought out plan without having to force every soul to do God's bidding, because the first soul is a really good parent, and no good parent is a dictator. Authoritarianism is a bad solution for any grouping of sentient things, which, all sentient things are groupings of souls ruled by an oversoul. And that's what we do in each life is learn how to be a better oversoul, how to be a better leader, how to be a better parent of the polity that we are given command of. And it just so happens that the human form is a really good place to learn that, because you've got a lot of stuff within that you have a lot of control over, your own body, and you have a lot of stuff without that you have limited control over, or has quite a bit of control over you. And dealing with that is a great way to learn how to be part of a self-organizing system, which that is what the multiverse is. It's a self-organizing system of training souls to be creative so that the multiverse can get bigger and expand, and consciousness can get bigger and expand. And that's the whole point of everything, because ultimately what is valuable? Knowledge, especially beautiful knowledge. Art is beautiful knowledge. It's beautiful knowledge manifested into a work of art. And so that is, if for an omnist, an artistic passion is one of the more noble. Doesn't matter what it is, and doesn't matter if anybody actually appreciates it. That call to do something creative is the manifestation of the energy of the first soul and the children of the first soul, who played the largest part in defining the laws of this multiverse that we live in. Okay, I think that's been enough for the first episode. I hope some folks will watch this. Feel free to comment. At some point, if I'm able and I get a following, I may do some live streams. For right now, I'm just going to put it up like this. And I apologize to anybody who has followed my other YouTube creations in the last year. I'm not going to be singing because I don't want to get things taken down for copyright notices. So, boo-hoo. I may do a separate channel of singing so you can enjoy my song stylings combined with lyric changes and a little bit of preaching around songs. But I'm not going to do that anymore. So, thank you for attending the first Omnist Hour. I hope to see you again. Leave comments and chat. I'll get around to monetizing this and doing all the other things and telling you to share and like and blah, 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 because I'm a poor guy too. I don't really want to make money doing this, but it wouldn't be bad. Be nice to have a little bit more than what I'm going to be getting in retirement in about 5 months to live on. But I'm okay with whatever happens. So if you like it, just give me a like. Share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.